Welcome to Switching On Electrified Skills, the podcast that sparks your curiosity and ignites your passion for a career in electrification. I'm Deepak Farmer. Join me on this electrifying adventure where I connect you with industry leaders, visionary education providers, and pioneers driving the electric revolution. Discover the world of skills, jobs, and community, gaining actionable insights, inspiring stories, and the latest developments. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Switching On Electrified Skills. Today is going to be a really interesting day. I've got two very experienced guests who've come over from France this morning to join us. Thank you. From the Renault Group. And I will come to my guests first to introduce themselves. So we've got Patrick.
Thank you, Deepak. So my name is Patrick Benammar. I'm the Learning and Development Vice President for Renault Group. And I'm also leading the Renault University, which is a new ecosystemic corporate university created in 2021.
Brilliant. Oliver?
Hello, I'm Oliver. So I'm in charge of Technology and Design Academy in Renault Group. So Technology and Design Academy is in charge of about skills program in Renault Group, but also for external companies like companies belonging to our ecosystem.
Brilliant. So really excited today because you don't often get, international guests who come and join us, but also it gives me a chance to sort of explore a little bit from a European and international perspective. So I'm really excited to try to, I think there's a lot we're going to unpack. Probably won't cover it all, but I really want to try and get into some of that depth. But firstly, just start with a little bit more about yourselves. I want to know a little bit about your backgrounds and how you've come about into this role, and really what's motivating you to be part of this ecosystem.
Personally, I am coming from finance initially. I started to work in finance in a construction company a few years ago. And then I moved into the world of the industry. I joined Siemens to become a head of HR and working specifically for the healthcare activity. And I discovered during my stay in Siemens the automotive industry, because Siemens at the time had a lot of activities around automotive, and notably in France. And I decided to move to an automotive supplier company, Valeo, where I stayed almost 14 years. And when you are working for an automotive supplier, going and participating to the evolution of a car maker, of an OEM, is something which is really attractive. So this is why I joined Renault in 2018, when I took over the role in terms of learning and development for the group.
Wow, that's quite a journey, and a lot of experience to unpack there. I'm looking forward to do that this session. Oliver?
Yes, for myself, I am an engineer. In fact, from general mechanical engineering. So I spent my career whole my career in Renault Group, but I used to be in many countries. So I was in many countries in charge about engineering team in those countries in which we have R&D departments. So I used to develop skills, in fact, in these countries. So this was the link. So just as I am now for 2 years in Technology Design Academy, I changed my point of view, but I still develop skills for the countries and for France also, of course.
Fantastic. Wow. So lots of experience in the room. Now, what I want to start with really is sort of laying the groundworks and trying to understand the current climate that we're in. Looking at some of those challenges and those opportunities that we see, especially in the transition. Now, Renault obviously has been, it's massive. It's a huge global organization, and traditionally working very much within the combustion engine space, and a huge transition's taken place over the last few years. Tell me a little bit more about the changes and the challenges, and I guess the opportunities that the electric market has brought, and maybe where Renault is in terms of trying to place itself in that sort of global position.
I think Renault has been in a very, very tough position in the period of COVID. We almost disappeared. And with the change in the top management, with the arrival of Luca Di Meo, we had the chance to redesign the company through the Renaulution plan. And in the Renaulution plan, there was really a focus which was very strong on the products. And the focus on the product was to say, we should have a role to play in the electrification of mobility, but also on the mobility of the future. So it was an opportunity to rethink the company and also to redefine the portfolio of skills that would be required to go in this direction in France, in other countries, but also on the ecosystem of partners who are going to work with us on this project. And what was interesting is at the beginning, it was something that was perceived as probably a dream or something intuitive that really concrete. And year after year, we have been able to demonstrate that, yes, Renault is back. We are able to show products which are valued by the customers globally. And we have been able also to attract partners and collaborate with them to develop solutions which are really at the forefront of the mobility of the future. So it has been also a good demonstration that you can achieve financial results, positive financial results year after year, build on this approach. Because for 2024, it was the record year in terms of profitability for the company, despite an environment which was really unfavorable.
So, from a technology point, Oliver, how's the challenges been there in terms of trying to adapt to the new? Yes, we've got new products coming in, but from a research and technology and development and innovation point of view, what challenges have you faced and continue to face?
Yes. So, in fact, the electric car brings, of course, all the technologies that is linked to the electrification itself. But it's also the opportunity of many other technologies that are around this electric technology. I mean, like, for example, connectivity and the opportunity to completely review the way the architecture of the car is made. It means now our cars are software-based cars with centralized electronics. And so it gives the opportunity to completely drive and architecture the car in another way. And also to offer to the customer the opportunity of new services, like those linked to connectivity, for example. So yes, it's a very big challenge, in fact, now that we have in front of us to build these cars based on these new technologies.
That's fantastic. And I remember when I was in France with you, and you talked about character in the cars, and we talked about trying to connect with that user-centric design. And I thought that was quite an important thing that you said there, because obviously, from my perspective, we're very much in supporting skills. We're very much in supporting people. But when you said that to me, you realize at that point that it's people building for people, right? And if people can understand their users and their customers, right, then they can have the right skills and the right development to be able to build the vehicles and products for that market. So from a market research point of view, obviously Renault is very much, trying to understand their customer. And we know in the EV market right now, one of the biggest things that we're trying to all achieve is the adoption of the end user, trying to use more vehicles and reduce that price point and trying to understand the vehicle in terms of what do people want. How does Renault, place itself in trying to understand their customer? And fundamentally, how is that then pushed into the vehicle design, development, and innovation?
Yes. So, of course, market research is the main starting point for us to understand how we are going to shape our future car and future services. Of course, and also the tools that we can use to make these market researches have been changed. Also, recently we have, according to with the data technology and AI, we can do many new things about market understanding by today. We have dedicated teams in the group that deal with this subject, and we work in upstream phase. We work with them closely to understand what are the most important unique selling points. That's how we call them, to define how the car should be shaped for being as most attractive to the market as possible, and to bring the value as we expect it to be. Yeah.
And it's a two-pronged approach, right? So you've got the idea that we're going to build the vehicles, but we are reliant on infrastructure, we're reliant on regulations and lots of different government initiatives around that. We, or the audience here, will understand some of the nuances around that in the UK. What is it like in the European market or in France particularly? How is the government supporting? What are they doing in terms of regulation? What sort of interaction is Renault having with that government and influence to a degree?
I think there is a set of regulation in Europe which is very much depending on the government initiative to promote electric mobility. And in France, there is still a support from the government, but which is more limited than it was in the past, because you had, for example, tax incentive which have been reduced due to the budget constraints that the state is facing. But then at the same time, the question is also around the infrastructures to charge, the availability of the infrastructures, even the payment modes to access this infrastructure, and the investment which is done also by the energy companies. So what we see today is a form of distance from the government, which is promoting, I would say, the capacity from industrial or energy or technical partners to provide solutions. The question is how far these solutions will be integrated and probably maybe more integrated in a European system in the future in order to make the electric car a solution which is not only available at country level, but also more European based in order to facilitate the mobility across countries. So there is a question of governmental, I would say, engagement to support this initiative, and at the same time, the support which is given to the consumer, which is reduced to buy cars and to switch to an electric mobility.
Excellent. So, we talked earlier outside, about understanding that, we've got an ecosystem around this
Mhm.
that needs to be supported, and primarily because, as skills are such an important part of innovation.
Mhm.
They are intricately entwined. The right skills, the right people in the organization can significantly drive, product development and the innovations in that company. What does Renault do currently to support, because it's a rapid change, it's very quick, it's very fast, and we got to make sure that we have the right people in the organization. What's Renault doing currently at the moment to support its staff around transferring their skills, developing new skills, but also acquiring new skills into your organization?
So we work closely with the experts about their vision of the future and the technologies that would be in the portfolio of activities that will be at the heart of Renault Group future products. So it's really important, and Oliver is really a good example of this connection with the experts, the world of our experts, because our experts are everywhere in the world. To anticipate what does it mean, this approach of technology in the organization, and what does it requires in terms of talent and also type of skills that we need to develop. The second point is that we considered in Renault that it's also one of our priorities to help people to transition to these new roles. So, for example, when we launched the production of the new electric cars in France, or when we launched the production of the new electric motors in France, we have helped people to transition from their former job with traditional combustion engines or with traditional combustion cars to switch to new activities in these new technologies. So we train them, and we have created specific training programs in order to facilitate their capacity to transition to these roles. So it's interesting because we think that people could learn, and they could learn across their professional lives at many times if there is for them a form of need to change, a need to switch to another role. So it's a mix between informing people about the potential opportunities that will pop up in the company and saying, if you are interested to join, you can jump into the programs to become a new member of the team, Or you can also get the inspiration from the experts who are giving you a view on what's going to happen to anticipate and start thinking about the training on the skills you need to acquire to prepare the future. If you take AI, for example, it's really important. Everyone in the company has to be sensitive to AI. And we have trained more than 9,000 people in the last 6 months on AI because AI will be everywhere in the company, in the plants, in the labs, in the garage, in the distribution. So not any employee of the company could be out of the AI skills. The question is the deepness of the knowledge they need to have, and also the usage they will have from these skills in their daily jobs. So this means that the adaptation of the curriculum, the involvement from the experts is really key because they will give us a view of what we need to develop to prepare the future.
That's a really good answer because that brings me on to what I saw when I was in
Mm,
France, and I was quite taken back by your learn by practice
mm,
model and how much well you could let a machine do it,
mm,
right? But what I was pleased about, or what I was quite intrigued by, is that you teach every manual process,
mm,
right, as part of that learning, as part of the fundamentals of that
mm.
technology. Um, why did you choose that method? Why did you? And I think I know the answer to this because there's a degree of depth there,
Mm,
right, and less surface level knowledge.
mm.
But can you talk to me a little bit about why you've chosen to do so much practice, but in the manual processes, not just in the automated machines, but actually how do you wind,
Mm.
wind the windings around a motor? Why was that important to you?
It's linked to the culture of Renault and to the history of Renault. The first technical institute in Renault was created in 1929. And at the time, the problem is that you couldn't find the manpower to build cars. So you had to educate people to make cars because only engineers knew how to make cars. And the number of engineers you had in a plant were very limited. So you had to spread the knowledge to the others. And the only way to spread the knowledge was to educate people on the product.
Yes.
And there is also a great culture in the automotive industry of the gesture, the way to do things. When you're painting, you are learning a gesture. So it's repetition of the gesture, which is giving you the skills required to be a good painter. So this is the history of automotive because we have been always obliged, due to the evolution of technologies, to put people at the right level in terms of skills in order to follow the evolution of the products. And the speed of the evolution is higher. So, which means that if you want to have the right quality in terms of customer satisfaction, if you train people to things which are theoretical, when they will be confronted to the situation on the line, they will not be able to detect problems or they will not be able to solve problems. And as the culture of the company is very much, I would say, grounded in the capacity of the employee to have more autonomy, in the capacity to make things, you have to give the keys to the people to understand what they are doing. So this is why when you are building an engine and when you are doing an electrical engine, you have to understand what people are doing before you on the line and after you on the line to deliver a product that will be at the right level when you put it in the car and that the customer is going to use, because you don't want the engine to fail when you are starting your car.
Yes.
So I think it's really cultural. So this is why associating learning to practice is natural, because you learn by practicing. Otherwise, you don't learn. You have a knowledge,
Yes.
but the knowledge is not learning. You don't transfer a knowledge in the skills without practice. So it is our culture, it is our philosophy, and this is why the learning system should reflect the culture and the philosophy of the company.
Wow, that's actually really, really well thought out because, for me, you're absolutely right. If you can't translate the knowledge into practice or into, transferable skills, then the people, like you said, they haven't got the keys. So how can they really make a difference? But from Oliver, from the research side, you said we've got experts and we talk about, some of those new technologies, and there has to be this connection between, giving people the knowledge that can be then put into practice, but how do you take your knowledge and draw on that from the experts and push it into, people into practice really? How does that knowledge come through?
In fact, we work with them every day. We have what we call filière expertise. It is a expert network inside the group that is very well organized. So our job is to be in contact with them every day, and every year we review all the transformation programs on skills that are ongoing in Renault Group with them, and we check with them whether we need to develop new skills on some subjects, or whether we have to adapt some of our trainings. So it's an everyday job, in fact, that we do with this network. Based on their expertise, we have after that some other people which are belonging to this network also that are with whom we build the programs, the training programs that are given after to our colleagues in Renault Group. So it's an everyday job, in fact, that we do.
Wow. And it has to be, right? It has to be that circular motion all the time.
Yeah.
And just with regards to, we talked about Renault and its position and where it's heading towards. And I know that we've talked about, trying to build the ecosystem around this in terms of how people are adopting and using, because we know this in the UK, that it's not such an easy decision to make for an end user to say, okay, I'm going to leave my car and I'm now going to go and buy an electric car. Firstly, we've got price points. We've also got the range anxiety, as they call it, right? There's lots of things that actually become barriers to people. In fact, in the UK, less than 2% of the population has the means to access electric vehicles because it's not cheap, right? And because it's not cheap, there's no secondhand market, right? There's no aftermarket. So if somebody's going to have £5,000-6,000 to buy a vehicle, they're likely to choose a traditional combustion engine car than an EV vehicle because we know batteries deteriorate. What is Renault doing to try to support that or those kind of people that want to access it? They know it's the right thing to do. They know that they're going to be supporting the net zero agenda, right? But find it difficult to, have an entry point. And we know that we've seen a lot of influx of, cheaper Chinese vehicles, right? And Renault has to cope within that ecosystem. So what are they doing to support that?
We have a different situation depending on the markets where we operate. So, for example, in France, we have, due to the long history of electric cars in France with Zoe, which was a very successful car, we have a second-hand market in France. And buying a Zoe or renting a Zoe in France is really affordable for somebody who wants to do it. Secondly, we have a specific program which is, I would say, co-funded by the government, which allows people for 100 euros per month to get an electric car.
Oh, really?
So it's based on the first level of cars, which is for us a Dacia car, which is an affordable car with a limited range. But for some people, it's okay because in terms of maintenance and I would say run costs, the electric car is really cheap. And the third point is we are preparing a new car that will be around 18,000 euros in France. That will be more accessible due to the fact that we are also proposing funding solutions, financing solutions through our bank, which is Mobilize, helping people who really want to access to an electric car to do it. So I think the pre-existence of a market, of a mature market, is helping. This is the difficulty with UK, where today the market is only the new cars appearing on the market, and you don't have all this possibility to expand and to propose different range of solutions for the customers. But I think it's going to change in the coming years. And this is where the government could help to subsidize part of the activities in order to help people to transition to a new form of mobility. The second option is also to consider hybrid cars, where the adoption could be better because you have different forms of hybrid cars that could be proposed. And generally, we tend to see that people switch first to an hybrid car before going to a pure electric in the majority of situations. So I think it's also interesting to keep in head that hybrid cars are also electrified cars, and they contribute to the reduction of CO2 emissions, which is important because the final objective is also to have a reduction of the CO2 emissions linked to transport. And this is something that should be promoted where even if the situation is not pure electric cars. So I think it's also a question of impact on the environment, and this is why pure electric is not the only option. We should also consider other options, and this is why we have, in the last years, very much promoted hybrid cars in order also to get these cars more accessible, even with a second-hand market, which is more important than for electric cars.
I think that's really important. And the reason I asked that question in the context of skills is that if the ecosystem is doing well and everyone is, more cars are being sold, then we can naturally assume that the businesses are growing. Businesses like yourself and obviously the tier one supply chains, all the things that are connected into that system. This in turn, for me, means there are more jobs,
Mm.
right? There are more opportunities. There are more, long-term careers, right, for people. And we, obviously in the Electric Revolution Skills Hub, but in general, are always looking to support people into new jobs, new opportunities. But we can't do that unless there is a destination for them, right? If they don't have a job to go to. So we can say that there are lack of skills, but at the same time, there's a huge responsibility that sits with employers who often tell me that we have a lack of skills, that there has to be jobs. They have to be paid at the right rate. There have to be, prosperous careers. The company's culture has to be correct, right? There's so much more around skills that is important. So for me, at the moment, I've seen that, as we start to, I think that we're riding a particular type of wave at the moment. And as we start seeing the increase in the amount of vehicles being sold, more jobs will come on the market. And we in the Electric Revolution Skills Hub are very much advocates for trying to make sure that we're ready for that. When it hits a peak and when skills are needed, that we have the right skills to be able to support that. For yourselves, how are you currently engaging with the recruitment market? How are you currently engaging with, acquiring skills? So there is the reskilling part. We obviously know this, right? But how about new talent? How do you engage with trying to get new talent?
It's a form of paradox because today, when you look at the newspapers, you see a lot of job destruction in the automotive industry, which are related to the, I would say, to the traditional combustion engine activities, and the numbers are high. That means that the volume of job creation is not at the same level, which means that you tend to think that there is no job opportunity because you see a lot of job description. Um, Renault has been creating jobs in the last years around, I would say, the manufacturing of the cars in France. So it was really in line with the evolution of the volume of cars we were selling. And this is exactly what you have mentioned. The volume effect is important because when we started initially, we were moving people from the former jobs to the new jobs. So there was no job creation. It was just keeping people in new jobs, but they were coming from us. And then with the new models plus the new volumes, we started to hire more people. So, for example, in the north, the first wave of hirings were 600. So we have a wave of hire of 625 now. But it has been required for us to save jobs before hiring people.
Absolutely.
And this is the difficulty because the jobs we are recruiting now are different from the jobs we had in the past. So even the academic sector is still producing skills and people who are, I would say, aligned with the former requirements we had 5 years ago. But this is not the type of jobs we have in the plants now. So, for example, if you go in the plants, you see a lot of automatic lines, and to drive an automatic line in terms of production and skills is completely different than being just a production operator in the past. So I think there is this gap that you are mentioning is due to the fact that people tend to think in the old world, but the reality of today is that we are creating jobs, and the rhythm of evolution of the skills required is we change things every 2 or 3 years. So, for example, we are talking about software development. When you build a software-based car, you need more software engineers. But with the arrival of AI, you will need more data and AI engineers on top of software engineers. So, which means that software engineers will have to learn about data and AI, but you still need software engineers. So, there is a paradox around the volumes of hirings, which were very high in the past, associated to some typical jobs, to the fact that now we are going to hire probably people who will have more capacity to learn with a solid foundation in terms of skills, but with the capacity to adapt and to acquire these new skills to stay in the company for a certain period of time. So the profile of the people we are hiring is completely different. I'm giving this example. For example, we are hiring people who are bakers in the plants because with the price of the energy, having a bakery is tough. So most of the bakeries close. But these people, they know an industrial process. They know how to deal with the quality of a product. They know how to work hard. So if they want to knock at the door and go into a plant to work on the lines, they are perfect to drive a line.
So that's a really important point, and I think the audience is going to really try to understand that, because we're talking about automotive, we're talking about engineering, we're talking about technology, batteries, and here we're hearing from the VP of learning and development at Renault that you're hiring bakers. Now, that's an important thing because I don't think a lot of people know this, but there's a lot of transferable skills, right, that come into this space that will become, fundamental to the growth of this industry. And, that transferable skill, which we can utilize in a different form, is right. Somebody knows the industrial environment, they know the process, they know how to be able to mix, or do lots of different things. And I guess we don't do enough, right? And actually, part of this is we're having this podcast, is part of raising that awareness that you don't have to be from this industry and an engineer to be able to eventually work within this
No.
space. But what you do need is one thing that you mentioned is that you need the ability or the desire to learn, right? You want to be able to adopt. You want to be able to, increase, your knowledge base. So that's a really fundamental thing that you've said there.
And I think that something which is striking in the last years, because I've been working in the automotive industry for a certain number of years, in the past, we were looking for people who had some type of abilities which were really related to the product or things they were doing. So you were good in doing welding, you were hired to do welding. Today, we tend to hire people who are good in working in teams in the industry. So how far you are able to integrate yourself in the team, to bring your contribution, to have the respect of the product, to think to the quality you are going to deliver to the customer. It's more the question of mindset than abilities, because most of the abilities you can learn them.
Absolutely.
And it's a big change because in the past, it was something which was really black and white. You can or you can't. Now you see a lot of people who are just knocking at the door and said, I have the motivation to join you. And it's interesting because sometimes in their family, they had someone who has worked for Renault in the past, their grandfather, an uncle, somebody in the family. And they said, I didn't really think I could work one day for Renault, but I've seen that you're hiring. Maybe my profile could fit in or not. And then the question is, through the training, could we see if they have the right abilities, if they have the right learning capabilities? If they do, they join the team and they can grow in the company very fast. So that means that the system has completely evolved. And I think this is why the connection to academics is really important, because you detect as an academic the people who have this capacity to learn, to be part of the group, would be always pushing for solutions. And these are the people we are looking for in the automotive industry, because we don't know what's going to be the mobility of the future. We don't know which technologies will be leading. It's changing very fast. If you look at the batteries 2 years ago, we are saying something, now we're saying something completely different. So this capability to reinvent yourself is part of the deal when you are working for an automotive company today. So this is why the profiles that we are looking for are not traditionally and the conventional profiles we had in the past. So I think if you want to be part of the game, if you have the willingness to do things, the automotive industry could be really a leading sector for you.
So that's really, that's exactly the kind of thing, the message that we've got to get out there, because there's so many people that don't have that awareness. But look, we've seen in the last few years, well, sorry, last year really,
Mhm.
the emergence of AI, and we want to unpack that a little bit in terms of what that means for Renault, particularly Oliver. We've got AI that's been emerging especially in the Gen AI, but actually from a research perspective and from a scientific perspective, AI is a fundamental tool. And actually, currently, we're in the UK, or my team are looking at, can AI potentially plug gaps, right? Skills gaps, particularly. Can it be used to solve problems? Can it be used to be able to predict the next stages of different technologies or failures or whatever that might be? How are you seeing that market at the moment, and how are you feeling about using AI and its rapid growth and its emergence into your organization?
Yeah, in Renault Group, there's currently a big program to deploy AI everywhere, because really AI is starting to be everywhere in our industry. In engineering, of course, it's in the car first. We talked about software, so it is in our software, in fact, to improve in different domains of the car, the performance of the car, and the service that the car offers to the customer. But it's also in our tools. I mean, in our engineering processes and in the tools we use as AI every day to improve our performance by in engineering activities. So. In fact, AI is really key everywhere. Let's say in engineering, in our product, and there's a big program currently in Renault Group about it to bring this skill everywhere where it is needed.
So I asked this question at one of the podcasts to Bentley, and I said, what type of profile of a person? And we talked about profiles a little bit, but there was something that he said, he wants a mechanical engineer
Mm.
that has electrical experience, who understands software design and understands UX, right? Now that is a very big ask for anyone to have. But it's almost like the type of engineer has evolved, right?
Yes.
You had like you said, there was a type of engineer before. For Renault, what does that ideal employee look like? If you were, yes, you have many different roles, and we have the capacity to learn, and we have, the ability to try to, adapt to the coming environment. But if today you had to describe the type of engineer that you wanted to work there, how would you describe it?
I think the ideal type of engineer is yes, as you said, an open-mindedness engineer that is capable to adapt, that is has skills in agile working in team, because things are so much growing, changing every day. That means that every engineer in Renault needs to be able to cooperate with the others in a more agile way than previously, because he cannot do everything by himself alone. So yeah, I think many soft skills now are crucial. I think for our industry, and especially in product engineering. Yeah.
So, what about yourself, Patrick? What do you think?
I think the engineer of tomorrow is someone who is curious by nature. So the question is how far you can um, identify options that could be pushed as an engineer to find solutions to get a better service for the customer. And I think the interesting thing is that I had a boss in the past who was saying an innovation is a research program that has found a customer. I think the customer orientation is also very important because when you are doing something, you have to think to the customer usage and for the capacity also for the customer to take advantage of the solution you have built. And I think there is also an economic awareness because you can spend a lot of money on innovation, but if it's not worth at the end, nobody is going to buy it. It's useless. So I think you have also to have this economic awareness, which helps to design solutions which are adapted to the financial environment you are confronted to. If you want to do an affordable car, you have to find affordable technologies and you have to design them in an affordable way in order that the products arrives and that the customer could pay for it. And I think it's also important to have this capacity to understand um, the economy which is behind the product, which was always something which was not in the scope of engineers in the past, but that becomes critical for me because you have also to provide something, a service, a product, which is designed for a customer and that will bring the value which is expected from the customer and not something which is out of reach. And the last point for me, which is important, and Oliver mentioned it, it's the capacity to work in projects, but projects, not the projects we knew a decade ago. The forms of projects, organizational projects, ways of working are changing dramatically. So the capacity to work in projects with a big S is something for me which is really key because you can work in a project which is a development project, but at the same time you could be involved in a user experience project. You can be involved as a contribution to a research program, and you should be able to take all of that to bring a value for your company and for your customer. So this capacity to work in projects and also collaborate with other culture, with people who have a different point of view, and have the capacity to have an open mind in order to accept solutions which are maybe not your solution is also critical because the quality of the project is leading the quality of the products at the end.
Excellent. And I don't want to talk too much about from a car sales point of view, about the global market, but from a global skills perspective, you've got operations in multiple different countries. Are you seeing any particular trends, right, across the globe in terms of those skills, right, and the availability of those skills, but also in terms of competition?
Mm.
Because there's lots of industries that want the same skills. What is your perspective on acquiring skills, but from that global perspective? Where are we seeing that, main challenge?
We see two things. The first one is we have markets which are more dynamic than others, and you have willingness to invest in the skills development in some regions which are different compared to others. So if we look at the willingness to learn, this is something which is public. You have cultures, environments which are more favorable to learn. It's not a secret, for example, that when we launch a training program in India, people jump in immediately. It's not always the case in France. You have to remind guys, you have to do it. So the appetite to learn is very different from one country to another. The second thing is that I think the motivation to learn is also pushed by the dynamics of the market, and the employment market is one thing. So if you are in a very dynamic marketplace, you are pushed to learn because you have opportunities to grow. If you are in a very stable, even declining market, you are pushed to learn because you have to move away from a situation where you are in danger. So I would say the motivation is different. And you see that when people feel in danger, they tend to learn because there is a pressure on them. And when there is a dynamic market where you can grow, because if you learn things, you can get a better position somewhere, China, Mexico, Brazil, India, then you move. So the environment is very much influencing the behavior of the learners and also the incentive you can get. So you have some markets where you have incentives to learn because you can get a premium by changing jobs and getting a promotion or a more interesting job. When the market is saturated, even if you learn, you are not sure that you are going to have something in your pocket at the end. So people tend not to learn. So I think this is really something that our governments are missing, is that if you don't create these double dynamics, you decline.
I think that's such a great point. And, with the way that we're now seeing that ecosystem, if you were to give some advice, right, to engineers or our audience, right, who are listening to this around, being part of the EV growth, be part of Renault, be part of the automotive industry even, what advice would you give them from actually both your perspectives? We from the technology and development point of view and also from a learning point of view. Start with yourself, Oliver.
Yeah, my advice would be adaptive. Adapt yourself to all the new skill challenges that you will face every day in your job. So it's a kind of mindset to be open to any new skills challenge that is in front of you.
Is that yourself, Patrick?
I would say two things. The first one is around being curious and investigating beyond what is visible. So try to engage in conversations with people who are really knowledgeable in order to better understand the technology challenges which are behind what is said, I would say, to the public. And it's really interesting to go deeper. So take an education program where you can learn more about the technology, even if it's the first level in order to discover the technology. It will help you to define if you want to go further or not, or if you feel that something is meaningful for you. And the second point is being connected to people. So if you have the opportunity to talk with people who are from the inside, who really know about what's happening, and to give you some advice, it's always more valuable than learning something which is public. Because the speed, what we are living is so exciting and so much engaging that the passion that our people have about what they are doing, it's difficult to spread it publicly. But when you have face-to-face discussions, when you are discussing with somebody who has been in your university, who is working on an automotive project, they will always tell you more about what they do day by day in their jobs and what they are motivating, why they are so motivated, than what you could read in a newspaper. So networking, conversations with people who are in is really, for me, fundamental.
Well, that's really good note to finish this on. So we're running out of time, but one final thing that I wanted to ask you is looking forward now, in the next, few years, right? What would you like to see from the ecosystem, especially around skills as well? So really my question is, when you look at the education system, when you look at, academia, what's the one ask that you have from them, right? And then if you then look at the people who are going to be doing these roles, what's the one ask you have of them? So if you both want to try and give me a thought on that, that would be really, really, I think, quite useful to our audience. So the first one, what would you want from the academic world to support the industry?
Well, what we expect is to cooperate on good programs that are useful for either for us and that are challenging and engaging for the students. So cooperation on new programs together.
Sounds good. Patrick?
I think we are still living in two worlds. And this is something which is always a question for me, because I'm very much engaged in education since decades. And bringing people together is needed. So I think there is a form of mistrust, which is an issue. Because at the end, I think we all have the same objective, is to do the best for people to be, as the students, successful in their professional development, and for us to have employees who are feeling well in their jobs. So we have the same objective, but I have the feeling that sometimes we are not serving the same cause. And I would like people to sit around the table and try to find the opportunities to collaborate, as Oliver has said, but also to serve the same cause. And I'm not defending or fighting for my company or for the industry. I'm thinking more to the impact on the society, the impact on the employment market, which is needed to create the growth for the future, because we all expect the future to be better than the past. And today, this mistrust is creating a form of decline, which is impacting, I think, negatively our employment market.
Okay. And finally, right, one ask that you would have of the next generation, what would you want from them coming up? I'm talking, people who are currently in school, in college. What's the one thing that you want from them going forward as a collective? What would you like to see from that generation? It's a big question, that one.
So they will be the customers of tomorrow. So it's their role to design the mobility of tomorrow. It will be in their hands. So I think they have to shake our organizations, even if it's difficult because they don't have the experience and they don't have maybe sometimes they don't have the skills, but they have the ideas, they have the views, they can build the user experience of tomorrow. So I think they have to bring their vision of the future and to contribute, not being, I would say, in the driver's seat, but much more being at the command of the car, giving a destination. And I think we expect the new generations to help us to define what will be the future of the world, because they will be there. And it's a question of responsibility. And it's more or less like the academics. It's a shared responsibility to prepare the world that we want for tomorrow. And you cannot rely on the others to do things that you don't want to see on.
I think that's a really good note to leave that on. What a great thing. Yes, shared responsibility, right? And really defining the future they want, right? As part of the solution and being with us and being able to grow it. So I think that's a really good thing to wrap up on. Thank you both, right,
Thank you,
for
Deepak.
Thank you.
coming over and also giving me the time here. Our audience are going to be really happy. Not enough time, as always, to unpack everything, but I'm looking forward to maybe doing this again. So thank you very much.
Thank you
both of
very
Thank you
much.
to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this electrifying episode of Switching On Electrified Skills podcast. Together, we'll shape a future that is powered by electricity. If you would like to learn more about electrification and explore courses and jobs, please visit ershub.co.uk or connect with us via social media channels. Thank you once again for joining me today. Until next time, keep charging ahead and unleash the full potential of your electrifying skills.